If a banknote could bypass the world's most advanced infrared detectors, slip through the most rigorous magnetic ink scanners, and leave even central bank experts staring through high-powered microscopes unable to find a single flaw, then is it a counterfeit or is it real money? This is a true story that took place not long ago. During a routine audit at a world-renowned multinational bank, a batch of $100 bills that had just sailed through 3 layers of cutting-edge composite counting machines was sent for final human verification. There were no flashing red lights, no machine alerts. If it hadn't been for a veteran clerk with 30 years of experience noticing a thickness discrepancy of just 1/10,000th of a millimeter by sheer touch, this batch of perfect masterpieces, known as Supernotes, would have quietly slipped into the capillaries of global finance completely unnoticed. Every single bill in your wallet might just be dancing with ghosts. According to long-term tracking by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, and Interpol, the total value of counterfeit currency and the illicit shadow funds derived from it circulating in the global underground black market is conservatively estimated to be worth tens of billions of dollars. This massive pool of unofficial capital is parasitizing our seemingly robust global financial network at a staggering speed. They don't just flow in the shadows, they are quietly eroding the M2, broad money, supply of the world's major economies. Every time hundreds of millions of perfect counterfeits blend like ghosts into legitimate funding chains, it is the equivalent of injecting artificial purchasing power into the market without any actual economic output. Like an ever-expanding invisible bubble, it dilutes the real value of the assets held by everyday people, slowly eating away at the purchasing power of every normal transaction. Many people assume that counterfeiting is just a petty, low-level crime confined to street corners. But they are wrong. When the craftsmanship of a counterfeit banknote reaches the point of perfection, it ceases to be mere fraud. It becomes an invisible assault on national credit and the global financial order. The true essence of currency is trust, and perfect counterfeits undermine the very foundation of trust upon which human society relies. This bloodless financial war is far more thrilling and terrifying than you could ever imagine. Why can a piece of paper that costs only about 14 cents to produce legally command a value of $100? To understand this clash, we must first look at the true nature of currency. The money circulating in modern society is known as fiat currency. Its underlying logic is based neither on gold nor silver, but on national credit and a social contract agreed upon by all citizens. When you count your bills, what you hold in your hand is not wealth itself, but a perpetual credit note issued by the state that will never default. The true nature of counterfeiters is to use high technology or ultimate craftsmanship to alter and usurp this credit backed by the entire populace. This is a form of black market alchemy operating in broad daylight. To defend this credit, humanity has engaged in a centuries-old arms race regarding currency materials and anti-counterfeiting technology. Looking back at history, currency substrates have undergone a long evolution, moving step by step from ancient parchment and mulberry paper to today's specialized cotton and linen fiber blends. Modern banknotes must not only carry sovereign credit, but they must also endure ultimate physical trials. They require extreme wear resistance, tear resistance, and that signature, instantly recognizable crisp texture. In modern printing technology, 4 anti-counterfeiting features stand like insurmountable walls, known as the 4 kings safeguarding currency security. The first line of defense is the secret of the substrate. Why does a US dollar bill feel nothing like ordinary paper? Because according to the official standards of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, BEP, it isn't actually paper at all. It is a unique textile blend of 75% cotton and 25% linen, completely free of wood fibers. This specific ratio grants it unparalleled durability. Furthermore, specialized security fibers that emit a distinct red or blue fluorescent reaction under 365 nanometer ultraviolet light are evenly embedded within the substrate. The second line of defense is the magic of ink. Modern high-denomination banknotes widely utilize extremely expensive optically variable ink, OVI. On the current $100 bill, for instance, tilting the note by an angle of 20 to 40 degrees causes the number in the lower right corner to shift dramatically from copper to green, a phenomenon driven by the optical interference physics of micron-level multilayer thin films. Additionally, the surface of the bill is coated with magnetic ink containing iron oxide. When it passes through a counting machine at a specific speed, the magnetic particles generate a precise electromagnetic waveform response, a hidden signal meant only for machines to read. The third line of defense is the art of touch, the famous intaglio printing technique. Inside the printing press, extreme pressures of 15 to 20 tons per square centimeter force high-viscosity ink deep into the paper fibers. Once dry, the ink stands tens of microns above the surface, creating a distinct, tactile, three-dimensional relief. Moreover, the microscopic lines carved onto steel plates by top master engravers over the course of months are so incredibly fine and precisely spaced that their complexity completely eludes even high-precision digital scanning equipment at 1,200 dpi or higher. The fourth line of defense is the integration of high-tech micro-optics. The current $100 bill features an embedded 3D holographic blue security ribbon composed of hundreds of thousands of micro-lenses. When you tilt the note up and down, the bell icons on the ribbon move side to side. The manufacturing precision of this micro-lens array is at the micron level. Combined with high-definition hidden watermarks visible against the light and micro-printing text like USA 100 measuring only about 0.1 millimeters wide that requires high magnification to read, they construct an airtight fortress of security. Yet, even as anti-counterfeiting technology continues to iterate, this race has veered into a bizarre and unexpected direction. In Peru, South America, a ring of underground syndicates known as the Artisans operates. According to joint law enforcement reports by Interpol, these criminals hiding in the slums of Lima do not possess industrial-grade printing presses worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Instead, they have chosen an incredibly primitive yet shocking path: pure handcrafting. These Peruvian counterfeiters use cheap, second-hand offset presses for the base layer and then use incredibly fine needles and manual sanding to split and paste two sheets of specialized thin paper together. Through sheer physical manipulation, they inject highly realistic counterfeit 3D security ribbons into the layer between the papers. They then use hand-carved molds and small hydraulic presses to simulate the raised, tactile feel of intaglio printing. This ultimate expression of folk craftsmanship has miraculously bypassed multiple barriers set by modern high technology. Statistics show that these Peruvian-made counterfeits once accounted for nearly 16% of all fake US currency circulating in the United States. They can easily fool ordinary commercial counters found in local neighborhoods, making this one of the most dramatic spectacles in the currency war. Among all counterfeiting crimes, the most terrifying are not those masterminded by civilian criminal geniuses, but by legal counterfeiters who wield the apparatus of a nation-state. From the late 1980s to the early 2000s, a type of counterfeit $100 bill known as the Supernote surfaced across the global financial system on a massive scale. According to investigations by the US Secret Service, the craftsmanship of these notes achieved a breathtaking industrial standard. They abandoned the patchwork or photocopying techniques common in civilian crimes, opting instead to use the exact same specialized non-magnetic red and green inks used by the Federal Reserve. They even utilized industrial-grade intaglio presses manufactured by KBA Giori in Switzerland, costing millions of dollars. Confronted with a near-perfect replica backed by state-level resources, the US Secret Service, in tandem with the CIA, launched a decades-long international manhunt across global money laundering networks, Middle Eastern casinos, and diplomatic pouches protected by sovereign immunity, ultimately pointing the finger at a specific regime under severe international sanctions. Behind this state-sponsored counterfeiting lies a massive economic motive and survival strategy. For regimes isolated from the international financial system, manufacturing and dumping powerful global currencies onto the world market serves as a form of foreign exchange blood-sucking. It allows them to bypass international sanctions and generate hard currency out of thin air, which can then be used to purchase core strategic resources like oil and weapons on the black market. This brings us to a concept usually reserved for discussions among economists: seigniorage. Simply put, seigniorage is the monopoly dividend a government earns because it holds the exclusive right to issue currency. Printing a $100 bill costs only about 14 cents in paper and ink, but because it is backed by national credit, it can buy $100 worth of real goods. That massive gap of nearly 99% is the profit pocketed by the issuing nation. State-sponsored counterfeiters exploit this exact mechanism. They fire up state-grade printing presses to mass-produce perfect fake dollars at the same incredibly low cost. When these counterfeits enter circulation, the counterfeiters are effectively stealing the credit dividends that the United States spent decades building. Without spending a single dime of real value, they can purchase genuine oil and gold on the global market. It is the literal theft of another nation's macroeconomic wealth. This state-level crime triggered a catastrophic global chain reaction, and the casualties extended far beyond the United States. For the primary target, the United States, the Supernote crisis forced the government to redesign the dollar multiple times within just over a decade. To upgrade the global anti-counterfeiting network and technical detection equipment, the U.S. Treasury invested hundreds of millions of dollars directly from its fiscal budget, creating a massive administrative and financial burden. However, the most devastating blow often fell upon innocent, developing third-party nations. In parts of Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, where local currencies are volatile, local merchants, small businesses, and ordinary citizens prefer to hold and trade in a hard currency like the US dollar. When supernotes spread into the financial capillaries of these countries like a malignant tumor, local banks, lacking laboratory-grade detection equipment, had absolutely no way to tell the difference. Once these bills were eventually processed and declared void, the savings of ordinary people in developing countries turned into worthless paper overnight. A large number of secondary currency exchanges and local commercial banks faced staggering losses due to asset freezes after inadvertently accepting the fakes, sparking panic and a crisis of trust in local financial markets. This monetary shadow war, born from geopolitical conflict, ultimately manifested as an invisible storm that plundered the wealth of everyday people in developing nations. Having analyzed the geopolitical maneuvering of state-sponsored counterfeiters, we must now return to the everyday world of our streets and neighborhoods. The ultimate destiny of these counterfeits is to flow into the individual cells of the real economy, where they induce a slow poisoning of statistical models and macroeconomics. Statistical data reveals that civilian counterfeiters employ calculated psychology when selecting the denominations they fake. While the $100 bill offers the largest payout, joint data analysis from the Federal Reserve and the Secret Service indicates that in daily global consumer transactions, criminals heavily favor the $20 and $50 bills. This is due to a natural psychological defense mechanism among merchants. When handed a $100 bill, cashiers become hypervigilant, repeatedly testing it with counterfeit detector pens. However, when encountering common denominations like $20 or $50 used for buying coffee, gasoline, or fast food, their alertness plummets. This low-value, high-frequency laundering strategy allows lower denominations to circulate with a very high velocity, functioning as the actual lifeblood of the counterfeit market. To monitor this underground current, the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank utilize a core quantitative model called the Counterfeits Parts per Million (ppm) ratio, the number of fake notes detected for every million genuine notes in circulation. Historically, when a country's ppm value spikes abnormally, it signals that the real economy is being bled dry by an invisible tax. From a macroeconomic perspective, the unregulated influx of counterfeit money is an illicit expansion of the broad money supply, M2. A central bank expands M2 based on the total output of the national economy. Counterfeiters, however, inject artificial purchasing power into the market without creating any actual goods or services. It is exactly like watering down a bowl of soup. The inevitable result is the systematic dilution of the public's real purchasing power. This hidden inflation triggered by counterfeit currency is a stealthy mechanism that steals wealth directly from the pockets of law-abiding citizens. Yet, the deeper damage lies in the eventual transfer of business costs. Faced with elusive counterfeits, modern commercial society is forced to build higher walls. From multinational supermarket chains to corner retailers and commercial banks, astronomical compliance costs are poured out every year. This capital is spent purchasing more expensive AI-driven sorting machines, upgrading recognition algorithms, training employees, and absorbing unavoidable losses from chargebacks on fake bills. In the logic of commerce, businesses never simply swallow these high compliance costs. Ultimately, they are meticulously factored into the overhead of goods. Through higher shelf prices and added service fees, these costs are quietly passed along to the consumer. This creates an absurd cycle. Criminals print the counterfeit money, yet every law-abiding citizen buying milk or bread at the grocery store pays a higher price, effectively subsidizing the crime. This is exactly how counterfeit currency silently chokes the vitality out of the real economy. When we shift our gaze from the macroeconomic battlefield of the US dollar to the other side of the Atlantic, we find the euro facing a completely different yet equally fatal heart condition. On the map of European counterfeiting, one name strikes terror into the heart of Europol: Naples, Italy. According to official statistics, a staggering nearly 80% of all fake euros circulating globally originate from Naples and its surrounding suburbs. This is not because the region hosts giant, secret military-grade factories, but because the local mafia syndicate, the Camorra, has completely decentralized the manufacturing process. The Camorra abandoned traditional, centralized operations. Instead, they broke down the printing process into dozens of independent steps, outsourcing them to cottage workshops hidden in farms, abandoned warehouses, and the basements of ordinary residential homes. One family might specialize in mixing optically variable ink, another might stamp watermarks using small presses, and a core group finally assembles the components. This highly specialized, distributed industrial model turns police raids into a game of whack-a-mole. Even if one site is shut down, dozens of others keep running smoothly. The addition of modern technology has given the Naples counterfeit operation global wings. With the advent of the dark web, the counterfeit distribution network has evolved to look terrifyingly like an e-commerce platform. We can dismantle this transnational distribution chain through a precise return on investment, ROI, and pricing mechanism data model. In the supply chain of a counterfeit €100 note, the underground workshops of Naples act as Tier 1 factories, selling their product at a wholesale price of just 7% to 10% of its face value, 7 to 10 euros. This low price point is more than enough to cover their material and labor costs. Next, major dark web distributors purchase these notes at 20% to 30% of face value, listing them on anonymous dark web marketplaces using cryptocurrency for settlement. Finally, street-level buyers and money mules from all across Europe place orders on the dark web, receive the packages, and inject them into the real consumer market at 100% of their face value. The profit margins across this supply chain are several times over, demonstrating an incredibly powerful, profit-driven momentum. What frustrates European law enforcement even further is how perfectly these syndicates capitalize on the conveniences of modern logistics and geopolitics. They fully exploit the Schengen Agreement, which eliminated border checks within the European Union, disguising crates of fake notes as ordinary cross-border parcels shipped via international couriers directly into France, Germany, Spain, and across the continent. Remote taverns, bustling open-air markets, and seasonal tourist spots that lack advanced counterfeit detectors become the ideal dumping grounds for this paper trail. At the very end of this massive chain are the street-level couriers known as mules. They don't need to understand complex finance. They rely entirely on a street-level laundering technique called structuring or splitting. These mules hold 50 euros or 100 euros counterfeits and selectively target the busiest newsstands during morning rush hour or dimly lit bars late at night. They buy a pack of cigarettes, a cheap bottle of wine, or a newspaper, paying with the large counterfeit bill to walk away with a pocketful of legitimate, genuine cash as change. This high-frequency, fragmented method is extremely difficult to catch in the act, effectively diluting the high legal risks into the background noise of everyday transactions. Countless microcycles like these eventually converge into a massive torrent of black money, transforming the scrap paper spat out by the basements of Naples into a persistent, toxic poison flowing through the veins of the European economy. The wheel of time is spinning faster than ever. Driven by the rapid acceleration of technology, this centuries-old anti-counterfeiting arms race is facing its most radical paradigm shift in history. Today, the world's major economies are experiencing an unprecedented wave of cashless transition. According to recent data from central banks and the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, the crime rate for traditional physical counterfeiting is experiencing an irreversible, cliff-like decline, driven by the rapid expansion of mobile payments, contactless settlements, and central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. In some highly digitized developed regions, a street vendor might go an entire year without ever handling a large physical bill. Does this mean that this financial shadow war over counterfeit currency has reached its final chapter? The answer is no. Physical counterfeits may be entering their twilight, but the human desire to manufacture wealth out of thin air remains a permanent parasite in the shadows of technology. The counterfeiters of the new era have not mended their ways. They have simply moved their battlefield from ink and paper to the codes and algorithms of the digital world. On this new, intangible battlefield, criminal methods have become even more covert and lethal. Today's digital counterfeiters no longer try to master intaglio printing. Instead, they target counterfeit crypto stablecoins. They exploit underlying vulnerabilities in blockchain smart contracts to inject malicious code, executing infinite minting exploits on certain tokens. Alternatively, they employ AI deepfake technology to perfectly mimic the voices and faces of corporate executives, instantly bypassing compliance checks for massive digital asset transfers. From the clash of inks to the battle of code, the form of the battlefield has shifted, but the essence of the crime remains unaltered. Looking back at this perfect storm that spans centuries, we ultimately realize that the essence of currency was never that beautifully engineered piece of cotton and linen fabric, nor was it the flashing numbers on a smartphone screen. At its deepest layer, money has always been the crystallization of mutual trust and credit extended across human society. As long as the human illusion of gaining wealth without labor, of creating riches out of thin air, persists, this cat-and-mouse game between the machinery of the state and the shadows of the underground will never have an endgame. Have you ever received a counterfeit bill in real life? With digital payments becoming increasingly universal, do you think counterfeit money will completely disappear in the future? Feel free to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments section below.